played a game today that I lost, um, but I think it's a game that I can take a lot from. So I think one of the important things for me, at least, is to try to learn from my losses and try to look at the root cause of why I lost and if there's anything I can do about it, or if it's just like a one off. So I was playing a game today on chess.com, and I was playing in Zen mode where you can't see the rating of the person you're playing, and you like chat is disabled, so there's like it minimizes the distractions, and that's what I'm going to try to do going forward. And that way I can just kind of focus more on my thought process as I'm playing. But this guy was rated a little over 100 points higher than I was at the time, and you can see I got it in review mode here, and the graph was pretty flat. It was like a pretty fairly well played game overall. And so my point isn't to go through like all the moves in the game, but one thing I've been working on lately, I just the last time I met with my coach, I had reached out to him to ask if for advice because I seem to be like losing my games, just getting in my own way, kind of, instead of having my opponents actually beat me. I would a lot of times I would lose from winning positions, and it's just kind of you know hanging pieces. Not necessarily that simple, but in this game it kind of was. But he came up with a very useful framework for me, and it's something I want to refine over time. But the idea is I've been trying to work on it like some kind of simplified thought process. I think a person can get like have trouble if you create a thought process that's too complex. Um, it just doesn't, you need at some point you need the main elements to be kind of subconscious, so you just automatically do them, and that's what I'm trying to work on. And I'm kind of more worried about that than my actual results here for the short to intermediate term, because I want to really come up with like a thought process that doesn't abandon me when the game gets complicated or exciting. And that's what happened to me in this game. But the general idea is to appreciate the hazards in the position, and I think hazards is a good word, a good way of thinking about it, because there's threats, which every time an opponent makes a move and there's a threat, you got to decide if it's a threat you need to respond to, and then if you do, you just need to respond to it, right? So it's kind of a simple thought process. So that should always be like the first thing a person does is whenever your opponent moves, what are they threatening? But then there's also situations where it's not like a direct threat like on the next move that you need to respond to, but it does create a hazard, like there is new contact points between the pieces, or it creates like a potential hazard for your king. And so this game was determined by the former, where I didn't, I drifted from my thought process when the game got interesting, and I didn't appreciate the hazard in the position. And it's unfortunate because I had a good position against a player whose strength is what I'm basically trying to get to, like within an intermediate term, like a year or so, I'd like to get to the strength that my opponent was. So I feel kind of good that, like I held my own against my opponent here. But I think like if I can iron out this thought process and make it kind of subconscious, over that next year or so, then, I think I can battle players like this, because I lose a lot of points by losing games like I did in this game. So I'll just kind of zoom forward, and I did miss opportunities. Like I had an opportunity here. I could have played c4, which I didn't even think of during the game, but it's fine. I still got a good position. And so here we kind of enter a move that would fit this mental framework. So after this exchange of pawns, we create a hazard in the position. And it's not a bad thing. It's fine. I mean, it's actually a good move, right, according to the computer. But a person just needs to be aware of the fact that the pawn is now attacked once and only defended once. So if this queen were to move away, this pawn would be hanging. So that's what I mean by like hazards. And so like every time that your opponent makes a move, or you make a move, you're going to make a move, I think what I'm trying to do is be cognizant of the new threats the new hazards that are created in a position. So, like right here, the hazard is the pawn on d4 is attacked once and only defended once. So it's not anything that I need to address right away per se. But if you mentally note that, then you'll be aware of it. And so I was doing a fine job of using this process until we get further into the game. And what happened was, in this position here, I saw this potential weakness of this e6 pawn, and I wanted to be able to hit this guy with g4 and unveil, this rook on this weak pawn. And so instead of moving, the safe move would be to play bishop to g3, I decided to play bishop to f4 because I wanted to be able to hit him with g4 and put pressure on this pawn. And lo and behold, the guy played this move here, which allows me to effectuate this plan or idea. So unfortunately for me, I didn't mentally note the weakness that I created, or just a unprotected piece, which at this point there's no threats against it, right? So I mean, it may be worth noting that the piece is unprotected, but it's not. There's no contact points currently between that bishop and any of black's pieces. So I move forward with this idea of winning the pawn. And what's interesting is there is a contact point between the black queen and my pawn on g4, which is not protected by any piece other than this queen. So it is like x-rayed one time and protected one time. So if this rook comes off the board, it's a threat. There's a threat there in the position that this queen is tied to protecting this bishop. And I let my guard down. I was excited, trying to think of how I'm like, oh, I got a good position here. I didn't know this guy's rating was as high as it was. I wouldn't have guessed that based on like getting into this position, because I felt pretty good actually in this position. And I was trying to think of ways, I was planning ahead basically, this conceptual blindness where, as an adult, you're trying to look at the abstract ideas and plan ahead, and then you forget about what's right in front of you, this g-pawn, and the threat that this queen poses to it. And so what happened in the game is I didn't appreciate that threat, and had I appreciated that threat, I wouldn't have played this move right here. And now I'm just completely lost, and I resigned. I resigned right here, basically, because I'm just lost. I played this move just to make sure that he saw it, but I figured he did. And I'm just lost, because I take this back. This hangs. This hangs. I'm just crushed here. So the main point is that had I, on every move, looked at the threats in the position, even if I didn't see it back here, because ideally I would see it like way back here and just exchange these rooks. But even though I didn't, even if I would have just noticed it here, I would still be okay, because I would just have to say, okay, this is a obvious hazard in the position. Attacked once, only defended once. This queen has to maintain the defense of that pawn. And so I could just simply play bishop to e3 and life goes on. It's just, I'm still a pawn up in this position, right? So obviously he has some compensation for it, but even though I didn't notice it when I entered those complications, if I just kept that thought process each and every move, I would have came out of this position just fine. And so one thing my coach suggested for working on this is to use easy defensive tactics puzzles, and you just kind of like list the hazards and threats. And my idea is to do like maybe just like 10 to 15 minutes a day of that, and just try to have it become something that my brain kind of automatically does. And I realize it will take some time. It's not going to be like an instant fix or anything like that. But I'll show you what I mean. We'll switch over here to Chessimple. And Chessimple is a good website for working on tactics, in my opinion. And I'll show you how I set this up. But this is set to a level of easy and a level of defensive, or a theme of defensive tactics. And after we do this one puzzle here, I'll show you how I set that up. But basically, white just played bishop to g5. And so we look for the threats and the hazards. And so I see there's a threat right here. He's threatening to take the bishop, and there is not any protection, right? So it's threatened once, protected 0 times. And he's also threatening to do bishop takes d5, which would be kind of nasty potentially, because it's a check with the bishop and also a double attack on the queen. And so you have to go through and figure out, okay, what do we need to respond to? What the hazard do we need to respond to that? How do we get out of that? So in this position, we could actually just get away grabbing that and then using this pin, right, to get out of it, and we're fine. And you can see it's only like a 1300 rated puzzle, so it's like an easy puzzle. But if you do these, 10, 15 minutes a day, my hope is that a person will more quickly be able to appreciate the hazards and the threats in the position. And so to set that up, let me see. You can go to, under training, go to chess tactics. And then when you first boot this up, there'll be a thing that says change set. You can change the difficulty, and that we set to easy. And under set, you can go down to themes and motifs, and you can go under tactical motifs and set it to defensive move, where you're trying to find a defensive move. Then you just hit start, and the puzzle comes up. So yeah, I thought like it was really interesting that I had this game against a stronger player than myself, and it really highlighted to me that I think I'm onto something here with this, trying to get this thought process to become like automatic and always look at the hazards in the position. With some experience, I think it won't waste much time. You can just quickly do it, and it'll almost become subconscious, but you got to put in the work to get there. You got to do the reps. And so I'm willing to do that because like I said, like it's kind of encouraging. Like I want to just, my intermediate term goal is to get basically to where that guy's rating was. And, like I wasn't overwhelmed by him, quite the contrary. I had a pretty good position. It kind of shows me that like the openings aren't as important as you think. Like I didn't play that opening correctly. I still got a good position. I can learn, I know what I'm going to do next time. And, yeah, it's I'm kind of excited about the thought of just working on something that I think a lot of people would ignore and not do because it seems so simplistic. But I think most people, that are around my level or lower, if they look at their games, they would be like shocked at how many games it would save them if they just consistently looked at the hazards, after every move of your opponents and the moves that you plan on doing. What new hazards does it create? So anyway, have a good one.